Hello friends, so we welcome you back to our second session of this talk show. In the last session, I had asked Vraja Bihari Prabhu on this concept of feeling satisfied. How am I ever going to feel satisfied in these pursuits of life? To which he answered, first basically he covered the topics of the difference and the similarities between man and animal. If you remember correctly, what were the similarities between man and animal? Seed. S stands for sleeping. They both sleep. E stands for eating, enjoying and defending. And what were the differences? In more specific terms, what are the qualities that are very special to the humans? What are their special potentials? That is A, B, C, D. A stands for they have an ability for higher inquiry. B stands for bliss. They can experience higher levels of bliss. C stands for making the correct choices. And D stands for determination to make the correct choice. As we discussed last time, even animals have this determination. But this determination they have is only restricted to enjoying seed. So now in this particular session, let's explore this further and let's understand why am I not feeling satisfied? Why am I always constantly looking for newer and newer things? When will this stop? So we welcome Vraja Bihari Prabhu on this chat show. So as we discussed last time, we came to a conclusion on how humans are special and they are not tapping this potential. But I was just contemplating, yeah, I understand humans are special, but God is one. I have heard this, and He is equal to all. He has made the whole world. He has made all the living entities. Why then did He give special privileges, this A, B, C, D, to humans? Why hasn't He given it to animals? Is He being partial to humans?
We need to understand that humans have a higher responsibility. Like for example, this is just like asking, why is it that the CEO of a multinational company, he draws a much higher salary than a simple housekeeping staff who is working also in the same company? Now externally it may appear that the housekeeping staff is working really hard physically. In fact, he may be working 12-14 hours a day and the CEO might just come for a few hours and he might leave. But you see that there is a huge difference in their pay structure and the perks they enjoy. Why? Or if you take an example of a high court judge, the judge comes for a few hours, he pronounces a decision and then he leaves. Whereas the clerk in the same high court is working the whole day and you see that he is really working hard, he's transferring the files, but at the end of it his salary is not even 1/5 or 1/6 of what the judge is getting. So we need to ask, why is this difference? Isn't this difference very glaring? So this difference exists because the judge, he has a much more higher responsibilities to perform. Or the CEO of a company, his responsibilities are much bigger. Similarly, human beings, we see that human beings have been given these privileges of A, B, C, D because we have a higher responsibility. And that's why you see, if you carefully analyze humans and animals, you'll notice that human beings don't have to struggle the same way like the animals have to for seed.
Correct.
Like simple example, sleeping for example. You see a donkey sleeping and the master comes and kicks the donkey. Get up! And the donkey has to wake up. Now you see human beings, when a child is sleeping, his parents don't come and behave the same way. Sleeping is not such a big problem for the human beings. Eating for example, you seen a hen or a cock eating grains? The hen is always looking here and there. She's always in fear if a cat would come from somewhere and pounce on her. So much fear. When you're eating your lunch, do you always look here and there? Oh, somebody's going to come and pounce on me.
Correct.
Or mating, for example. A dog sees a bitch and they mate, and then there are so many other dogs come. You see in the railway stations, you see on the road, and then there is so much of squabble, fights. But human beings, there is a culture, there are social systems made where you get married, and there is a proper cultural support system, and then you have your mating. Even defending, for example, the humans essentially, they are meant to live a life centered on ABCD. And because you're not tapping that potential, our basic seed activities are becoming extremely tough. Srila Prabhupada, the founder of ISKCON, he writes in Ishopanishad that the animals' sleeping, eating, enjoying and defending propensities are fulfilled under very nasty and unpleasant conditions. So the fact that we don't have to go through nasty and unpleasant conditions to take care of our seed means we have a higher responsibility. We need to not only take care of ABCD, we need to contribute to others' well-being. That is the responsibility of the human beings, and that's why we have been given these special privileges.
So basically the point is with great power or with great potentials comes a greater responsibility. And for fulfilling that responsibility, there are certain rights that are supposed to be given. So I think the human beings have a greater responsibility.
True.
And because of that, maybe they have been, they have been given this potential more than the animals. So the last time when we spoke on ABCD, I was a little bit more eager to know about the B, that is the bliss part. Like for example, now we spoke on responsibility. Now I would like to know that a human being, if he is responsible, he is first of all responsible towards himself.
Correct.
And he will be responsible towards others once he is personally satisfied, he is personally happy. And we very specifically talked last time that how he has a potential to be much more happier than animals. That's the B. But today, if I see my life, or I see life of my students, I see life of my colleagues, I personally feel what are we constantly doing to tap this bliss, tap this happiness? Because normally I see we are surrounded by problems, and there's a time when the problems cease. Like for example, I am supposed to give an examination in May. I am supposed to give an exam in May. Till May, I am constantly in stress. Once the exam is over, there is a 2-month holiday before the results come. And the student experiences a lot of happiness there. They enjoy. And I feel, is this happiness or is this just the lack of pressure? So, and if this is just the lack of pressure or problems, the cessation of problems, then is there something called as positive happiness, which is beyond experiencing lack of problems? So can you please elaborate on this bliss part, the happiness part?
Actually, it's a fantastic question that you've asked, and I would like to share my heart on this. But first, a disclaimer. We need not analyze so much about happiness, because sometimes what happens is we keep analyzing, and then we'll end up getting more confused. There is a saying that don't paralyze by analyze. We should not. There shouldn't be paralysis by analysis.
Correct.
Like a cockroach looked at a centipede which had many legs, and he was dancing very nicely, very graciously. So the cockroach approached him and said, when you dance, your 24th leg comes in front of the 16th leg. How do you do it? And the moment he asked this question, that was the end of the dancing of the centipede.
Right.
Because then he became too conscious of his dancing.
Correct.
So the point I'm trying to make is we need to be careful not to get into the analysis so much that we get paralyzed. At the same time, the questions you have raised are very profound, and I'm happy that you asked them. It's just that we need to clarify a few things here. One is you're giving the example of the student who gives exams and then is under a lot of stress and then he feels happy. That's not happiness. See, we could, first of all, let us define. See, happiness is simple. In simply put, happiness is something like the experience of pleasure, which is desirable, as opposed to pain, which is undesirable.
Correct.
Simple. Now, this pleasure that we experience, it can be at the level of the senses and the body, or it can be something deeper. So let us take first the pleasure that we experience at the bodily level, at the mental level, the sensual level. This is temporary. This comes and goes. That's why it's called as temporary happiness. And there is something called as permanent happiness, which essentially refers to a deep contentment in the heart. So now whether it is a student or a person who's working on deadlines and he has some deadlines to catch up with, and then he does that. So what he essentially is going through is, he is doing something and then he experiences some pleasure, some relief. So that's not real permanent happiness. Just in case you're getting confused, permanent happiness and temporary happiness. If one word definition or one way to understand, easy way to understand the difference between the two, temporary happiness is happiness that is characterized essentially by the feeling of relief. And permanent happiness, we are on the right track, we are on the way to feeling permanent happiness is when the primary emotion is contentment or fulfillment, which is much deeper. So temporary happiness or relief or pleasure generally is experienced through something external of us. Whereas deep contentment, you don't need objects of this world. It's deeper. So that is the starting point. That is how we understand that there is something called as temporary happiness and there is something called as permanent happiness.
So what I understand from this difference between the temporary and permanent happiness, as you were talking, I was thinking of all the various kinds of pleasures that I've experienced. May it be a pleasure of exams getting over, may it be a pleasure of a batch getting over, my student's batch, may it be a pleasure of passing an exam, or may it be a pleasure of eating nice food. I think all of this has always been, to put it bluntly, a relief from some kind of pain. Which means I had a pressure of chartered accountancy exam. I passed it. So it's a pleasure.
Yeah, can I interrupt you? Basically anything that has a beginning and an end.
Okay.
So this is explained in the Bhagavad Gita very beautifully by Lord Krishna to Arjuna. Ye samsparshaja bhoga dukkha yone evate adyantavanta kaunteya nateshu ramate buddha. Lord Krishna is telling that whenever there is samsparshaja, whenever there is contact of the senses with the sense objects, like my hand touches this, or my tongue, it is a sense. It tastes a nice rasagulla. For the sense object and the senses, when they come in contact, samsparshaja, when they come in sparsha, bhoga, that gives enjoyment, that gives pleasure, that pleasure only gives suffering. Yahi samsparshaja bhoga dukkha yone evate, it gives dukkha. Why? Because adi antavanta kaunteya, it has adi and it has anta, it has beginning and an end. And therefore, na teshu ramate buddha. Buddha means a buddhiman, intelligent person, doesn't seek happiness through objects of this world which give temporary relief. So I'm not saying we shouldn't pursue them. I'm just saying that shouldn't be the primary or the foundation of our existence, because it will only bring in disappointment, because everything is controlled by time. Everything has to perish. Like you've seen these children, it looks quite amusing, children make sand castles on the beach, and it looks very nice. So and then the children are absorbed making, and their grown-up parents, elders, they are standing nearby, they are sipping their coconut water, and they are looking at the children and smiling, because the parents know that while the children are busy making sand castles, soon a huge wave, or for that castle it's like a tsunami.
Correct.
A tiny tsunami comes along and it washes off that castle.
Correct.
And the children, they start crying.
Yes.
And the elders, they are laughing or they are smiling because they already knew this was coming.
Correct.
So according to Gita, Nateshu Ramate Buddha, the intelligent men, they are like that parents in the analogy. In fact, those parents who are amused by their children making sand castles, they are themselves like the child because they are busy making their own castles.
Correct.
They are busy accumulating funds, they are busy in objects which are temporary and which are perishable by the force of time.
Correct.
But a wise man, he understands this ramasa, this great force of time, and it doesn't derive pleasure from the temporary objects of this world. He may engage, he may use these objects for his service, he may do his duties, that's fine. But his primary source of happiness is not these objects. Because once that becomes his focus, let's say he focuses on the objects of this world as a source of his happiness, and that only brings in distress because those objects per se, they are perishable, they are temporary.
I still remember many of my friends when we were doing this CA course, when they finally did complete it, after how many other attempts they took, they felt a sense of happiness, which today I realize, it's nothing but a temporary happiness, it's a relief from pain. And that is the proof of that was, if I meet them today, they're still in distress.
Exactly.
If they had been actually happy, if they would have been permanently happy after clearing that course, then I think they should have been happy today also. But if they ask them, they only speak of problems they are facing right now. So I think that happiness of clearing that course lasted only for some time. So I think it has a beginning and an end. So I think that particularly is
Actually, if you see, if you travel in the local trains of Mumbai, that couldn't be a better example than this. You see that it's a small coach. It can actually logically take in only maybe 50-60 people.
Correct.
But the way people are crowded, there are hundreds of people in that small coach during peak hours. And then we see that 3 people can sit comfortably and the 4th person barely has a few centimeters of space to park his bottom. He somehow squeezed himself there. And then when he gets up, you see what happens, there is a rush. And a person immediately wants to grab that seat and he just sits there. And you see what happens to that person when he sits there. What he feels is relief. Relief from the misery of standing. So we are facing miseries whole day, all our life, that whenever we get some relief, So unfortunately what has happened for most of us is that these relief experiences, we are equating them as happiness. Unfortunately we don't have experience of something higher, so this is what we think is everything. So we are always looking for relief. Like this local train example which I gave is what is happening everywhere. It may sound a little silly, but that's the way it is. It's like, a boxer, for example, he's in a boxing ring and is being knocked by his opponent, and he falls on the ground, and then he gets up, and then again he is knocked by his opponent, again he falls on the ground. He's in great excruciating pain, but when he's lying on the ground, he's smiling. And then somebody asks him, why are you look so happy? And he says, yes, I'm happy because right now I'm not getting beat.
Correct.
So what happens to most of us is that our life is filled with miseries, and sometime we get somewhere some relief.
Correct. Unfortunately
that's what we call as happiness.
So basically what I understand is temporary happiness is basically, it is nothing but a relief from pain, and one of its most important characteristics is it has a beginning and it has an end. So anything that ends as a beginning is a temporary happiness.
Actually there are 2 more characteristics of temporary happiness. Although the way we can know it's temporary happiness is the primary emotion is relief.
Correct.
And there are 3 characteristics. You mentioned one very nicely. It has a beginning and an end. There are 2 more. One is it is relative, And secondly, it is also limited. Relative means basically it's generally dependent on some other factors. Like for example, generally when people are happy in this world, they are happy because somebody else is in misery. Like for example, if I get a seat, then somebody else has not got a seat in the train. If I am happy because India won the match, then somebody else is miserable because his team has lost the match. If a dentist says his business is really flourishing, that means people are in pain. If it's a rainy day, the umbrella seller is very happy because his umbrellas will be sold, and on the same pavement, if there is a vegetable seller, he is hoping the sun rises so that people come out and buy vegetables. So, and on a sunny day, the emotions reverse. You know, there was a billionaire who was interviewed once. He was asked what is his heart's longing and what is his desire. He said, I wish to go to he mentioned some place, a hilly place, very scenic. He said, I wish to go there and just relax and not have any worries of this world. I just want to live in a simple village and be happy. And then they went to that particular village and caught a villager and asked him what his heart's desire was. And this billionaire businessman was living in Mumbai. And he said, I want to go to this village and relax. And when they went to that village and asked that villager what is his heart's desire was, and that villager said, I want to go to Mumbai and make it big. So what I mean by relative is one man's food is another man's poison. So a person who is in extreme poverty, he wishes he has lots of money. And one who has lots of money, he wishes his life was less complicated. So our happiness, our sources of pleasure is relative. That's one. Second is beginning. It has beginning and it has an end. And also it is limited in the sense the quantum we seek is much more. The quantity of happiness we seek is much more than what we actually get to experience in this world. Just like if you go to a desert and you are really thirsty, and if somebody gives you just a spoonful of water, that's not going to quench your thirst.
Correct.
Your throat will still remain parched. In fact, you will want more water.
Yes.
Similarly, the happiness that we are seeking, we are wanting is much, much more than what this world can provide. Like I had a friend, he was in great anxiety. He was not getting campus placements, he was not getting a job, and he was in great distress. And then one day he came, he looked so happy, he was beaming. He said, I got an offer from a multinational company. So I congratulated him. And then after a few months when I met him, he was extremely miserable because he said there's office politics going on and there is discrimination against him. So then I consoled him, I sympathized with him. Then I met him again after 3 months. He was happy because he said he changed his job. And then again I met him a few months later, he said this new job has new complications. You see, it's never consistent.
Yes.
So it's going up, it's coming down. It's going up, it's going down. So we are, when we are constantly hankering for more, then we can never be happy. Have you heard of this famous fable? It's attributed to Alexander. That Alexander, when he left Greece in his conquest, his spiritual teacher told him that if you ever go to India, you should get a holy man from India back to Greece. So Alexander was excited when he came to India. He told his commander-in-chief that go to a sacred place, some holy place, and get a saint. I want to take him back with me to Greece. So this man heard about Vrindavan, so he came there. He spoke to a holy man and he said, come with me, our emperor Alexander wants to meet you. So this sage said, I'm not going to meet anyone. This commander-in-chief was extremely angry because nobody disobeyed Alexander.
Correct.
So he went back to his master and told him that the sage refuses to come. So Alexander was equally furious. So he came rushing to the sage and he drew out his sword and he said, how dare you disobey my command? And then as he was about to unleash his anger on the sage said, excuse me, who are you? Can you please tell me? So Alexander roared. He said, I am Alexander the Great. And then he asked him, what do you do? So he said, I conquer lands and I'm on an expedition. I'm going to conquer more lands. So then the simple old man asked him, what will you do when you conquer more lands? Well, then I'll conquer more. Then what? Then I'll have I'll marry the 100 most beautiful princes on this planet Earth. So then this old man asked him, then what will you do? Then I'll have 10 sons from each of these beautiful princes. And then what? Then I will conquer the whole planet and I will divide the whole planet amongst all my sons. And then what? And then Alexander said, then I'm going to relax. So this sage said, then you join me now. That's what I'm doing right now. I'm relaxing right now. Come, join me. But the point is that we are hankering, wanting more. But that's not happiness.
Correct.
We are always, that the senses are, that the mind is titillating. I want more. So what we are talking about, if we really want to be happy, we need to go deeper. We need to look for something that is consistently there. A constant feeling of shelter, a constant feeling of peace that is radiating from within, despite the external situations changing.
So basically what I understand from this temporary happiness concept is, first of all, it is nothing but a relief from pain. And as you mentioned, there are three important characteristics. One is it has a beginning and an end. Second, it is relative. Relative means happiness for you might be pain for someone else. And it is limited, means it cannot completely satisfy. Which means if I understand this correctly, if I am in a state of negativity, like in a happiness graph, if I am in negative, come from negative to zero, must be temporary happiness. It's relief from the negativity.
Excellent. That's an excellent example. Yeah.
And going beyond zero must be something permanent.
Yes.
So what can we actually do to experience this permanent happiness? We would like to inquire from you in the next show. So we are very, very grateful for this particular understanding of temporary and permanent happiness, and what happiness we are experiencing today is actually not happiness. It's actually just a relief from pain. So are we actually experiencing a relief from pain, or are we experiencing something which is permanent? Are we experiencing contentment? If we are not experiencing contentment, then what should we do to experience that? We will discuss in the next show. Thank you very much.